Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. I'm Beatriz Mourad, and today I'm joined by Michelle Anderer.
Hello.
And April Collins.
Hi there.
Today we will be discussing the 7th episode of Fruits Basket, Spring Comes. Warning, spoilers for everything that has aired up to this point. Some of us have read the manga, some of us have seen the early 2000s version of the anime, but we won't be talking about anything beyond episode 7. You can find out more about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes at overlyanimated.com/iTunes. You can find us on Spotify or on YouTube at youtube.com/overlyanimated. All right, guys, tell me, what are your thoughts on this episode? April.
So this episode was a lot. It was very loaded. I love getting to see Momiji again, and Hattori is not as bad of a person. Also, his story is so dramatic and so tragic, and I was like, oh my gosh, you need a hug, but then you would transform into a seahorse, and I also would not know if I needed to put you in salt or fresh water. So I guess it doesn't matter because he's a magic sea fish, or seahorse, excuse me. Which is fine. But this episode was just really loaded, and it was a lot more serious than I thought it was going to be. But it also gives us a little bit more perspective as to the Soma clan and how it operates, which is really unique because Soma's a common name, but their family is ginormous and they're so big that you could marry within the family and it would be totally okay.
Is it okay
apparently.
though?
I mean, I don't know. Yeah. That seemed like a really crazy concept, and also Akito is crazy. So
you can't wait to get to that.
Oh, yeah, right.
We're gonna talk about Akito. We'll talk about him.
But yeah, so I think that's that sums up my feelings. This is just a super loaded episode for sure. Very, very serious. Not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Michelle, what about you? General thoughts.
This episode made me feel really weird and conflicted because it was objectively very intriguing, and we learned so much about the Soma family and more about the curse stuff too, which I'm sure we'll get into more. But also the stuff with Hattori was really sad, and I honestly felt a lot of things, and I didn't even remember who he was from the first anime. So I feel that says something. But I was totally feeling for him this time. I agree with April. He is so dramatic though, and I feel that makes him more enjoyable. I wrote down some of his crazy this is translated into English, but his crazy dialogue is hilarious, and when we talk more about him, I want to do some dramatic readings because it's just so funny.
Oh my god, that's
he's just so much, and it's nice because he seems such a serious standoffish withdrawn person, but actually he's one of those super if he wrote poetry, it'd be the sappiest, most ridiculous poetry. That's the kind of guy he seems to be, and I love it. Yeah. So I enjoyed this episode, but yeah, it's not that funny. It's just lots of secret plot stuff and sad backstories and maybe a glimmer of hope, but then it's really foreboding at the end, so who knows even anymore. It was definitely different from last week. That was just all fun and games compared to this.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the darkest episode, I think, by far, of the entire show, I think.
Yeah,
agreed. For sure.
We see very dark and shocking emotions from people, from Akito, and from we see gore in a bit. At one point, it was borderline similar things to horror animes, similar how sometimes eyes will get very opaque.
The style.
Yeah, the style. Yeah, so it was very interesting. But I want to kind of dive in before we get into the very juicy plot stuff. The Soma state is huge.
Yes.
Right?
It's a lot of houses.
Goodness. Do they have to pay rent? I'm curious.
I don't know. Maybe they just own the place. There is a shot of Toru coming into the entrance, and it's just a giant pill. It was just egregiously tall. I was just
it's a fortress.
It's a fortress.
Yeah.
It was quite that was quite very interesting. But I mean, I feel this is very good because it kind of adds to this kind of aesthetic of the whole and like ambiance of like the Soma family, which is just like, it's very big, but it's very isolating and very quiet and very dark. Like this color scheme of the estate was very dark. It was not a bright day, like in terms of weather or anything. And it just really seemed not only like, is it actually like an estate? It has like a fortress. So it's like, it's isolated from society, which like is visually like it's a good like parallel to how internally all the Somas are isolated. But then you have like this it's wild. I was like, wow, I didn't remember that detail from the manga. But something that's so nice is that then we immediately meet Momiji, and that just kind of automatically puts us at ease. We're like with him, like having him there just makes it seem like, okay, it's not that scary because we have these people that are like we've gotten to know even a little bit, which was really nice. But yeah, let's talk about this kind of information that we get about the Soma family, which is one, Akito is just constantly sick. So our theory that Hattori is slowly killing him it's
hasn't
still there.
Subsided yet.
It has not been denied yet. All right, it's there, and we now have motive. So we now have motive.
God, we do now have motive. That's true.
So we now have motive. We know that. We know that now the Soma family is like has like over 150 members. It's like a big family, very very big, and within the estate, there's like a hierarchy. So even within like family, there's like the inner people and the outer people. The inner people are the Zodiac members and people who know that secret. And then you have everybody else. And I'm just like, okay, so there's just, you want me to believe there is like a mini like city within whatever in Japan this takes place in.
Apparently.
And
they have their own post office. Like,
yeah.
They have their own doctor. They might as well have their own post office, right?
Yeah.
Their own, like, apothecary. I don't know what to call. Pharmacy. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, something really interesting. We learned that Kyo is an outside member, which goes against, like, the whole logic of, like, oh, well, the inside people are the Zodiac members. But it's like, well, if it's to keep the secret, then why is Kyo an outside member since he can also turn into a cat? Like, what is going on?
I thought that was really interesting that he was considered, like, an outside member and I guess had to live, like, in the outer ring or whatever of the estate. But I agree. Like, why wouldn't you keep him on the... I mean, maybe to, like, further, I guess, go along the lines of, like, the you don't belong kind of situation, which is, like, I don't know. I feel like you're at risk, especially if family members don't even know about the curse.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's what I mean, though. It's like, if the whole point of having them be, like, inside is to keep the secret, then why would they let such a threat to that secret outside? Is my thing.
Yeah. Like a literal threat. Like, it would be one thing if, like, there was a person who lived on the inside and then moved to the outside who knew about the secret. But, like, you literally have a member of the Zodiac living outside.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, like, how horrifying that would have been for, like, his mom the first time or something like that? Like,
see,
let me give you a hug, son. Yeah.
But that's the thing, though. It's like, okay, so is it that the do you... And here comes, like, the question of, like, how does the Zodiac thing really work? Because is it, like, you're taken from your parents if they find out that you're a Zodiac and you are removed and you're taking inside from the outside? And is it seen like a rite of passage of, like, oh, you're, like, moving up in the world, you're going inside? It's like, I'm seeing...
Going inside.
Like, I don't know. I'm just seeing this very dystopian kind of, like, look at this, and I'm trying to understand, or maybe, like, it's the reversal for Kyo. Like, the mom had him, and then they found out he was the cat, so they had to push him out, so he had to be, like, ripped away from his mother's arms, but not to go inside, but to go outside. It's like...
Oh my gosh.
He's an outside cat now.
Oh, no!
Poor Kyo.
Poor Kyo. Oh, man, this poor kitty. But yeah, it's really interesting how, and also that not everyone in the family knows the secret, and I don't know, there was just so much information, and I'm just curious about how this information impacts how you see this family. Like, how do you see, like, from what we've known so far, with this added information, does that change your perspective of anyone in any way?
I think it solidifies kind of the dynamics we've seen between Yuki and Kyo, right? Because if Kyo didn't really grow up in that, we have reason to believe that the inner circle is not a fun place to be. No one really seems to be happy. They're all kind of dysfunctional. So I think Kyo's like general like inability to have a close proximity to that because of, I don't know, the pride of the rest of the family for being like, no, you're not cool enough for us, probably actually like was a good thing, because even though he desperately wants to go in, it's kind of because he doesn't know how much it can actually suck on the other side, which Yuki kind of reaffirms for us, right? Because all he wants to do is get out of there. And I feel like he probably has a good reason to feel that way. So to me, it makes like total sense. Yeah, if they didn't live in the same situation, like no wonder that's reinforced what they think of it their whole lives at this point, right?
It also makes sense too, like why like Kyo kind of like goes off and like does his own thing too, because like he's already been kicked out of like the inner circle where he should in theory like belong, but like the fact that they just make such a big deal to exclude him, like why not go train in the mountains for 4 months? I would too. Like, you don't want me, cool, let me go do something else, like go make myself happy, because obviously I'm not going to find my happiness with you, or at least it doesn't seem that way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's also like we've seen that, like for instance with I think her name's Kaguda, the boar.
Yeah, her name. Yeah, I was thinking about her too. Like, what was her name though?
Yeah. I feel like with her, like, I mean, we've seen that it's not like outside means that they never see each other though, because she grew up with him. They grew up together. So there is like, I don't know. I'm slightly confused of how this like outer inner thing works, because I'm like, it's a social hierarchy that's created by them for the sake of the secret, but also it has other implications. Is it like, okay, so is it like the most attractive people go in there because they're all a family, so it's like, what, you know what I mean? Is it like, is that why like all the somas are so attractive, because it's like all the attractive people go in there and they're the ones who like mate or something? I don't know how this works, but
that would explain why like Akito is so sick all the time, like,
I mean,
from
inbreeding.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's like, of course he's sick. I'm like, look, I don't care how many members you are. 150 people is still not a big enough gene pool. It's not. It's not, and you need a go out in the world.
You need a fresh face in there sometimes.
Yeah.
I imagine that like people who are in the outer have more like leeway in terms of who they can and cannot marry, or in terms of like who they decide to like mate with, because they're in the outer circle, so it's not really going to impact like the inner. And really, I feel like I feel like it's not really going to like mess with like the hierarchy that much. Like they're already on the outside, and if like inbreeding is an actual thing that is taking place in this family, then it would do them good to allow like a few outside marriages every now and then, sort of to dilute the bloodlines,
right?
If that's a case. And I feel like you only really get to move into the inner, like, I keep saying inner circle, it feels so weird, but in terms of talking about family, weird. Yeah, like I feel like
it weird by calling it that.
Yeah, so I feel like the people who are in the inner circle probably are the only one. Well, no, because they said some people on the inner circle don't know about the zodiac either, right? Or is like
no, I thought it was that it's like the people who were.
Yeah,
I thought it was like people who do know about it are inside. It's the members that are of the zodiac, and the people who know it are inside. That's how I understood it.
It's possible Momiji didn't explain it in a ton of detail because it's just second nature to him also. Maybe we'll get a little more clarification later.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know if I need it. I don't know if I want it, because it's still so...
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, let's talk about Hattori. Let's talk about let's talk about Harry. I don't know what to call him. Is it like Hattori is like his actual name, but then everyone like Momiji calls him Harry, and I'm like, maybe that's like, I don't want like Yuki to tell me that I'm like too close. You know how he did to like to Toru's family, being like, "Don't call her Tori-chan. You're not close enough to her." I feel like I haven't gained that level of like closeness with Harry, with Hattori. Anyway, so Michelle, tell me, one. I want to hear your readings. I want to hear your readings of these lines. I've written a few. Like, I have a few written too. I don't know if we thought these were worth repeating, but I want to hear what your take on this character that in the last episode we didn't really get to know that much, and now I think he's one of the characters we know the most about.
Yeah, no, he kind of is, right? Like, we got his whole backstory, like, because with Yuki and Kyo, we get little snippets, but those are just snippets. We got, like, the whole shebang, basically, with him. I mean, I guess we all kind of were, like, not fans of him last episode, right? Because he felt very menacing, especially because Yuki really didn't trust him when we trust Yuki's judgment. So, by proxy, we don't trust him. But then we were all wondering what the picture was about. And now we know what the picture is about. And I'll just say, like, I think Kana's great. She handled the reveal with the seahorse really well. And her whole speech to him about, like, yeah, it must be really scary to let people in, but, like, I love you, and I think it's worth the risk, and let's do this. And his, like, tears of relief got to me. I was like, oh, my God, like, I feel things for Hattori now. Good job, show, once again. Yeah. But Hattori, I mean, Yuki could very much have ended up like Hattori if he had been under similar circumstances. Because, like, I think one of the things that Akito keeps doing with all the Zodiac members is keeping them, like, making them believe that they're, like, broken people and that they're cursed and that they can't have a normal life. And I think, like, that's the biggest thing that's kept Hattori from, you know, realizing his best self. Because, like, yeah, he was kind of, like, standoffish and kept to himself, but Kana was able to really bring him out of his shell, and he was, like, super happy around her. I think she said something like, in the 2 months they were dating, once they got serious, like, it was, like, years of happiness that were, like, going into those 2 months that, like, he had been, you know, just holding on to beforehand, which is, like, kind of huge. And the fact that he's so dramatic about Kana is, like, hilarious, because, like, you get this other side of him, right? Like, he goes from just being this, like, stern, like, kind of, like, jerk face character who doesn't care about anyone to just, like, being really extra about all of his feelings and emotions about this girl he loves. And it's really wonderful. So I feel like that definitely humanized his character a lot for me. And I was like, oh, Hattori, you're so much. Like, I love that that's a big part of his personality, actually, that we didn't get to see until now. Yeah. So I'm a fan of his. And I think this episode, I feel like Toru really showed him that, you know, maybe he can't get the relationship with the girl he wants, but maybe she honestly could. She's, like, the next gen. Maybe it'll work out. I think he wants it to work out because he doesn't like Akito. Like, he cures him, but he tells her off the bat, like, oh, like, Akito, like, he has a plan for you, and it's not a good one, basically, so you should leave that family house now. Like, in his own way, he's trying to warn her, which is, like, weird that Shigure is, like, pretending that's not true, but that's a whole other thing. So I trust him more or less now. I think this episode did a lot of good to help prove that he's more than he seems on first blush.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because, like, it's so would you say you trust him more than Shigure at this point?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like they're both, like, they both think they're doing a good thing for her, but from very different very different angles. Like, honestly, I don't know about that. Like, it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Like, Shigure is just, like, not as upfront, but, like, we've known him longer, and I trust him in different ways, but I don't know. Can you really trust anyone except for Yuki Kyo?
I guess. True.
Can we even trust them?
Who knows? I mean, I will say, like, I feel like Harito is the most adult of the entire of all the characters we've met so far, because he's basically, especially now, what in the context of like what we've learned from him, especially with that scene with Akito and like the actual scene, not Momiji retelling it, but when we actually do see it, like he's telling Toru like, look, you could get hurt. I don't want you. Like, you need, this isn't safe for you. He's being the reasonable adult, being like, no, like, you shouldn't risk yourself for us. Like, it's really, you're going to get hurt. So I think that's, so it's interesting. Like, for instance, like, after this, I'm like, he is the most trustworthy character at the moment, even though he does have the power to erase memories. And we'll talk about that later. But, April, like, what do you, after learning all these things about Harito, like, what do you think of him? Like, give me your journey through this episode with him.
So, my journey, because like Michelle said, like we came off the last podcast, we're just super kind of suspicious of him. And again, that's just kind of the way that they set him up. But like, like it was definitely like the way that they set him up. But I think like it's like a complete like 180 in terms of his character and who he is. And honestly, like I would trust like Hattori more than any other character at this point, simply because he's been so upfront and honest with Toru. And I think it's just because like maybe he comes off very like closed off and everything, and that's just because he cares so much. It seems like he's obviously very dramatic in some of the things that he says, but I think like he's sort of like that's where he's gotten to, because he's seen like the worst of it, or like the worst of it so far for everyone. Like, I mean, he like lost his vision. Did he completely lose his vision, or just partially?
In one eye, right? He's like actually blind in the left eye, I think.
No, I don't think he's blind. They said he almost lost his
blind.
Vision.
Right,
almost lost it.
But
so
either way, like he didn't come out of that away, and that's like a super traumatic experience to like live through, not just for like him, but for Kana as well. And so like for both of like, it totally makes sense. Like, I mean, she's a super sweet person, and she handled her own for as long as she could, and like to like sort of go through that, like I would be like traumatized after that, and I would probably like I can't imagine how I would react, because I just can't handle like normal day-to-day life. So having to go through something like that would probably be even worse. Like, so like, I think she did the best she could. And like, it's no one's like fault that she wasn't like a strong enough person. Cause that's a hard thing to have to go through, like to love someone so much and then to watch them get hurt on account of like the love that you feel for them. And even then, like, it's not even because of that. It's just because one person couldn't handle like them getting close to each other. So I like his character makes so much more sense. And the fact that he tried to like warn Toru and everything is like a lot, because he could easily have just erased her memory right there, and or like did the hypnotism or whatever it is. Like he could have easily done that as a way to protect her, but he's giving her that choice, which is very like empowering. He's saying, hey, like I think you should get out of this situation because, you know, like something's up. I don't feel good about it based off my previous experience. This is what my previous experience was. And so like, I think it would just be best for like you. And if, you know, and even then like he's being protective of like Kyo and Yuki and even like all of the other Zodiac members too. Cause he's like, hey, like this could end badly for all of us. So, you know, like, and not just because of Toru, but just because he knows Akito and he knows how he can be. So like, he's probably one of my like most. I definitely trust him the most. He's probably one of my favorite characters just because his story is so dramatic. But like it's hard to not kind of like love someone after that, especially because he's like going out of his way to protect others because of his experience. So that's like. That's a lot, and that says a lot about his character as well. Yeah, I feel that. I will say, kind of to your point though, where he gives her the choice. I'm curious what you think, because we saw briefly him talking about how he would use his powers when like people would get mad at him to make like we see that image of Momiji like kind of crying and then coming back. So while I'm 100% there, I do think he's trustworthy. But this is the one thing that's keeping me from it, is that the show has presented to us moments where he has abused his powers. Maybe it took the incident with Kana to make him realize, like,
the weight of his power and just how valuable memories are. And maybe now he's trustworthy, whereas before maybe he did do some sketchy stuff of not asking people for their permission and then just doing it and just suppressing memories. But it's just curious how it's like,
I think that it's like, it's super sketchy, but I don't feel like he was doing it from like a malicious place. Like,
totally.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think Beatrice could be right that him as an outside person of a situation where he intervenes, he doesn't understand. He doesn't get the whole impact of having somebody else, else losing their memory, but being like the other person who like lives with the rest of those memories yourself and being the only one with that. Like, that's a kind of burden. And I feel like in that moment when he did it to his lady, he was like, oh, is this like my comeuppance, right? He has that line. He's like, from all the times I did it, like now I have to do it like to the one person that I have the deepest, most impressionable memories with ever. I do think that was very sobering for him, and it probably did help him maybe be more reluctant to use it, or at least like treat it as more of a serious, changing thing forever, permanent now.
Just understand like the weight of the power that he has.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of that story, I want to, before we get into Kana and what this big kind of like the second half of the episode, I'm curious. Do you guys think they should have made the episode what it was, where it's basically we get Momiji telling Toru like a condensed like version of that story, and then immediately right after getting the actual story? Would do you think that was made a bit too repetitive? Because in the manga it was two separate chapters and there was a chapter in between them. Like the two halves of this episode were split, and at first I thought, it's probably like, because it was like probably like a weekly or monthly release. That's why I was like, maybe that's why I feel like it's too close. But like in the manga form, it was like not that much. But in fact, there was an additional chapter in between them. So for so it was like a decision by the animators in adapting it. They were like, no, let's take this chapter out and put them together once and for all and like mesh the two. So I'm just curious, did you find it a little bit necessary to have Momiji tell like Toru the 5-second version, or did you think it was like too like how did the episode flow for you in that sense? Did you think it was time was used effectively, or did you not mind it at all?
I didn't mind it. In fact, I think if anything, like getting sort of Momiji's perspective on it first just only enhanced the story, like Hattori actually telling it, because the impression that I get is that Momiji is probably the closest person to Hattori at this point and within the Soma family. And so for not just like this person who cares about Hattori probably more than anyone, to sort of want to lay out that perspective, or not that perspective, but to sort of lay out that groundwork for Hattori kind of like adds like a different depth to the story as well, just because like Momiji understands the effects of that, or like what has happened to Hattori, and then it just makes Hattori's like being open about it that much more honest and more sincere, and just gives it like that much more power within the episode.
Right. Michelle, what about you?
Well, I just realized something. Did Hattori ever tell Toru the backstory, or is that all in his head?
Oh,
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. If he actually told her.
No, yeah, she didn't tell her.
She's being reminded of everything because she's doing all the similar stuff that Kana did, right?
No, yeah, it wasn't like him telling her. It was presented to us. We were told the story, and it was more like he was remembering it when he turned into the seahorse. Yeah, like it's while he was like, I guess. When he was like, I guess, unconscious because they didn't use the right water or something. I don't know what water to use. But
no one does.
But something also to keep in mind, this is episode 7, and we're on volume 2 of a 23-volume series.
For real?
Oh, wow.
Oh my god.
I thought so much has happened, and then I was like, wait. Yeah, and then I'm looking at him like, actually, we're not even going that fast.
Maybe
crazy.
that could have been the reason right there then, right? They're like, well, we got a lot to get through.
We've got to cut something.
Yeah, Beatrice, do you remember what that chapter in the middle was even about? Did she just like wander around the Soma enclosures some more and see some stuff?
So no. She went back home. I do remember she
went
went back
home.
home. It was like a Kyo Yuki with her episode. Thing. I didn't read it because I was like, maybe they're gonna put it next episode. So I didn't want to read it. But it was like basically the second half of the episode, like when she like basically when she falls and he catches her, that is just she runs into him on the street one day, and then that happens. That's what happens in the manga. It's just like whatever. She just like she meets him and she's like, oh hey, we met before, and then that happens, and then whereas here it just all happens at once, which.
Oh wow!
Which flows.
That actually makes I would definitely agree with April then, because this keeps the momentum of his backstory like firmly in our brains the whole time.
Yeah.
To really let us stew in all this new information about him without like any kind of distractions of other characters or anything. And I think that's probably a good call.
Yeah.
So I think I would. I mean, I don't know how to be objective if I can't read the manga, but as it is, I feel very content with it.
Okay. Yeah. Good. I will say now, like thinking about it more, it kind of because Momiji wasn't there when it happened, so he's basically telling her what happens like from word of mouth. So it kind of adds to this thing of like he's kind of like an outsider, like talking about a situation that you don't know that much information about, and then we get immediately the inside information, like the insider telling the story to us, not the Toru, but we get the actual thing that happened. And it just adds to this imagery of who's inside, who's outside in this family, outside this family. Just continues this kind of like, I don't know, it just continues this kind of wall of that people just put up these walls and this distance between each other if there's no direct relation or something. I don't know. It makes sense thematically to put them together, is what I'm saying. So let's talk about this love story. First of all, is Hattori... Okay, so he names himself both a seahorse and a sea dragon. So who is he in the zodiacs? Is he the horse or is he the dragon?
I think he's the dragon.
Yeah, the dragon.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they said like the seahorse, and then in the subtitle was like seahorse or sea dragon. So I'm like, okay, so he's the dragon.
Yeah.
Right?
That makes sense to me.
Okay.
Because I feel like doing a dragon is very hard, and this is like the most practical way to do a dragon.
Yeah.
Oh, come on,
like,
it's an anime, though. They can just do a dragon.
I feel like
think of a lizard. Come on.
No, I feel like, dragons like are like, I mean, they could have done like a Komodo dragon or something. But I'm just like, maybe it makes sense because dragon is a more mythical creature. So if they want to ground it into like
dragon.
Yeah.
Also,
actual dragon.
All of like the animations of the like zodiac forms have been very like cute, and so I feel like a seahorse is way cuter than like a Komodo dragon.
So a seahorse is way cuter than Gyarados, is what you're telling me.
Yes.
Gotcha. Understood. But yeah, so basically he turns into a seahorse in front of Toru, and that's what spurs the love story. We finally do get it. First, you guys have already talked about Hattori and Kana. We've met, we've seen her. She reacted the same way as Toru to it, and that's what spurs him to remember Kana. If you want to talk a little bit about the actual love story, I agree that for me the most kind of touching moment was like when their foreheads touch. When she's like comforting him, because it's like, she can't hug him, but there are ways to be extremely.
She smooches him, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does later after she does. Yeah. There is a lot of smooching in the show, which I'm all for. And it was really nice to show that there are other ways to be intimate than just like hugs. Even though I love hugs, I love them. But I want to get into the Akito scene. Like, that's what I want to talk about. But if you guys want any...
I also have theories about this stuff based off this Akito scene. So
okay, all right. I mean, Michelle, you sound a little sad. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the love story?
No, we can do Akito first. We're just going from one extreme to another, but that's okay.
It was happy. It was cute. She's still related to him, but it's fine. They're like, it was a nice love story.
Not even so much the love story, just like Hattori's like impression of like this girl changing his life is what, like, that's when he gets really dramatic, right?
Yeah.
And it's the best because like she's just being like cute, just like, snow. What do you think comes after when snow melts? He's like, I don't know, it's water. She's like, no, it's spring. And he's immediately like, she was my spring. It's like, oh my God, like, and then he just keeps going. Like, this is all the stuff right there. He's like, I was the snow. I'd frozen somewhere along the line of my dark cave.
My heart.
Yeah, and she was the fresh, bright spring. And I had to like pause to be like, is this the same man from the last episode? Talking about how he was the frozen snow in his dark cage. This is hilarious. I just like loved it because I didn't see it coming, but like somehow it makes sense that he could be both like really standoffish and like deeply the most extra person in the entire Zodiac, possibly.
Yeah. I will say, like, my favorite line of the episode was when he tells Toru, like, apparently I do nothing but make people cry. And I'm like, what? I was like, okay, like, yeah, I was just like, okay, that's dramatic.
Oh, man.
And he just leaves it there. There's no, like, pun. There's no joke. It's just there.
He's serious. Yeah. This is how he is.
Oh man. But yeah, so we get this scene with Akito, and it's very we get full view of Akito. We see him. And it's quite something. You know, the minute that he actually like put his hands on her, I thought, "Oh, I'm about to throw down." Okay. Like, no.
No one touches sweet Kana, okay?
Yeah.
And also, it's like, what's crazy is like, after all this, he is the one who hurts Hattori. He is the one, and he's screaming at this girl that it's her fault if he goes blind. He says, you think I'll give him to someone like you, which also puts into perspective that comment that Hattori says when he first meets Toru, where he goes like, she's just a normal girl. Yeah. That puts that into now perspective. He's like, wait, just a normal girl is okay with the secret? And it's like, and well, like, okay, here's my thing. Maybe we've read Akito wrong. Maybe he also is worth some sympathy.
I mean, probably, but he's making life awful for us.
No, he is. He's
not
inexcusable.
Making it easy, okay?
Look, inexcusable. Look, but this tells me, like, he keeps saying how he says, quote, we don't need you. You can't even lift the curse. Yeah. Which tells me he's miserable too. He has the same ailment as everybody else in terms of like, he's miserable, he hates himself, he detests himself, he thinks that he wants the freedom like everyone else. Like, he and Yuki aren't that different. What makes them different is that he reacts to things and reacts to his hopelessness through rage and through inexcusable actions that we see. But there's like, I now don't think he has to die, is what I'm saying.
That's good. I'm glad. Come to my side. Have him be.
He doesn't have to die. I mean, he doesn't have to die, but so I had a totally different read on that because we keep hearing about this curse, but it seems like
we're thinking the same thing. April.
Okay, because it seems like
Akito's the curse, right?
Right? Yeah. Yes. Well, no, not even that. That there isn't a curse.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, I think he's just like making this up because he's probably been so isolated in his life that all he has is these Zodiac members. And so he's like, well, you guys can't leave me because what about the curse? And they're like, the curse. And he's like, you don't want to know about the curse. Like,
wait, but I think they do know the curse though. Like, Kyo knows about his I'm assuming this is all connected. But like, Kyo has like this like thing that like a form. Like, Shigure, like when Toru asks Shigure about the curse, Shigure tells her like, I can't tell you that yet. So they do know. It's not like it's like made up.
Beatrice, but it could be different things. What if there's only one real curse, and that's the curse Kyo has, and the other curse is just Akito ruining people's lives, and instead of them saying, "Hey, you hurt my eyeball. I don't like you. I'm gonna go get married anyway," they say, "Of course, I never should have tried to get married. It was the curse all along. It finally showed up in my life." Like I just took it as like extreme like manipulation and like because like okay, yeah, I think that there's possibly something with like Kyo and having like an actual curse, but I don't think there's anything else that applies to the rest of the Zodiac members because like it because firstly, it only ever seems to be a serious discussion whenever we're talking about Kyo and the curse. But like anyone else, like it just seems like Akito's being like overly dramatic, like him getting violent about Hattori and Kana wanting to get married. Like that's an overreaction, which means that he's being overly defensive about something that is probably a lie. And like for him to sit there and be like, we don't need you. You can't even lift the curse. Well, there's no curse for her to lift off of you. Like, or unless like Akito's is like tied to like Kyo's curse, then that would make sense. But like at the same time, like it just seems like more like manipulation is at play here versus anything. So like, who wouldn't be scared? Like you are already turned into an animal when a member of the opposite sex touches you. So why wouldn't you also believe that there's some other type of curse like looming over your head? Like it's such an easy like situation to manipulate that like it would make sense, especially whenever he's trying to keep the Zodiac members so close to him. So
okay, idea.
I love ideas.
Maybe like the curse is like maybe we're not thinking we're not thinking literal enough. Maybe the curse is the Zodiac curse, like that, like them being able to turn to animals. But he thinks it like he sees these people like when he is met with like when he sees that people aren't being disgusted by the other members of the Zodiacs, and it's like, oh, you can live, like, instead of, basically, it's all perception. Instead of viewing, like, oh my god, I can turn into a cat, that's so cool. It's like, ew, I can turn into a cat, that's the worst thing possible. Right? So it's all about perception. But then he is like, okay, people are, like, proving us wrong in the way of our mentality, and people are falling in love with each other, and it's still okay. But it's like, he has such hate for himself and he thinks that no one will love him. So he's like, you can't love them because if I'm left to my own devices, I will end up alone and miserable. So I'm going to make sure you're all tied down to me so that we all live with this curse, even if like people can find joy in it. Like we can, like you can't leave me and like my negativity.
Yeah, totally.
Well, that's totally a learned perspective though too. Mm-hmm. Like you don't like just like immediately go into this like, hey, like, oh my gosh, I turn into a cat. Like this is the worst thing ever. Like, yeah, it would be very shocking at first, but in that moment of shock is whenever you make that interpretation of whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. And if someone is constantly telling you this is a bad thing, then you're going to believe that it's a bad thing because like you don't know any better. And if it's a person that you trust, then yeah, like, and they're telling you it's a bad thing, then yeah, you're going to believe it's a bad thing. I also wonder too, like another thought, maybe it's not Hattori who's poisoning Akito, but Akito is poisoning himself.
I mean, so maybe, to get
and then he can sit there and be like, "Oh my gosh, look at what the curse is doing to me!" Like as another manipulation tactic. Like it would not surprise me if he's willing to hurt an innocent girl, and one of these like family members that he loves and cares about so much. I mean, I don't know that he loves them,
supposedly at least, yeah.
Yeah, but he cares about so much. Then, like, if you're that so far gone in your delusion, like, it would not surprise me if you were like hurting yourself in order to keep it up.
Yeah. Why do you both think that Hattori doesn't blame Akito? Because he still goes to him and asks for advice when he goes, what do I do with Kana? She's sick. And Akito's the one who tells him, you know, that's what your gift's for. Erase her memories. But like, and kind of sways him in that direction. But why do you think they don't forgive him. Like, Momiji was very clear. He's like, he never blamed Akito for what happened. So it's like, why doesn't he? Is this because it's kind of like, I don't remember what the syndrome's called, but you know, it's like when it's everyone says
like
that
Stockholm
it's the
syndrome.
Yes, Stockholm syndrome, exactly. Where it's like kind of like they, or is it just simply like
Stockholm syndrome, because he doesn't like Akito. I think he still sees him as family, and he sees him as one of these very few unique people who has the same #curse of turning into an animal like he does. And there's like this kinship there that can't really be like breached. And, you know, kind of still like she's a Soma, but she's not like an inner Soma. She didn't know about the curse. Like there's always going to be this disconnect between his experience with the curse and her. And I feel like there are so few of them that have this shared experience. And the fact that Akito, he's like the head person. They needed his permission for the wedding. And like probably he does at least have believed that there really is a curse and that Akito was telling the truth, even if he acted out in a really not cool way. I think it's just like honestly complicated, right?
It's like 100% complicated, but I mean, I feel like it doesn't like for you to not blame someone and to, in a way, blame yourself for a circumstance that's totally, like, not that big of a deal. Well, I mean, the situation blew up, obviously, but for you to not blame the person who actually hurt you, and for you to just accept that, like, you did something wrong and you deserved it, like, that's not okay in any way.
Internalized sense of guilt, right?
Yeah.
You probably learned from a certain someone.
From a very violent certain someone.
I mean, I will say, because I agree, it's like I think the reason it's there, because there is this kind of familial bond and kinship, and I don't know if love is the right word, but there is, like, you know, the whole, like, blood is thicker than water type of thing, like, that whole mentality is there. But, like, we see so many times, sometimes, and people call this out, where it's like, if someone's abusive, they're abusive. Like, that being family doesn't give them an excuse to do that. So I'm curious to see where the show's gonna take it from here, because it's pure. It's shown us how the fallouts of like an abusive household, which is the Somas. That's what Akito represents, is this negative abusive household. And then we see that with Toru with the family that she was going to move in with, and it kind of shows us like blood isn't thicker than water sometimes. When it's like, if you don't, that's like the familial bond's there, but if you don't nurture and you don't, if it negatively impacts you, it's not worth it. And I'm just very interested to see where we go from here.
I'd be interested to see how, like, the show handles that situation, because the other thing with being in an abusive relationship, whether it's with a family member or a spouse or a partner or whoever, is that a lot of the times, like, the person who is being abused may understand that, like, they may have a small understanding that, like, what's happening is not okay, but most of the time they don't, like, blame the other person, they blame themselves, because that's how abusive it is. It's not just, like, physically abusive, but it's, like, 100% mentally abusive. And emotionally abusive, too. So, like, it'd be interesting to see how, like, we address this topic, because at this point, like, I feel like we have to, like, get to it and talk about it, because and as much as I love Toru, I don't know that she is the person who also understands what's going on to bring them out of that. Well, because like we've seen like her with her, like, her technical family, and it was also like an abusive household, and she just sort of accepted it and was like, oh, well, I have to be grateful. And I'm like, no, you don't. But she doesn't see that. And so it's going to be hard. I feel like it's also going to be hard for her to see that, like, what Akito has done or is doing is also not okay either, because you may recognize those behaviors, but you may not think anything of them because you're like, oh, well, that's just how family is, even though it's not.
There might be something to be said for, like, I feel like Toru, she's much more willing to bear the brunt of a bad situation herself than potentially see somebody else she cares about go through an equally bad one. So is it possible she could still be able to do better by them than she could potentially do for herself in the same situation?
I mean, in theory, but like, given that, like, the characterization that we've given of her, like, I don't, like, it's so sad to say, but I just don't see that happening for her, because she's already sat there, even with, like, her finding out about the curse and everything and the potential of her, like, losing her memory. She was like, well, if that's what it has to be done, like, and I'm like, that's not okay. Like, you shouldn't just have to lose your memory because, like, especially after you've, like, committed to keeping the secret and everything like that. Like, you shouldn't just be willing to accept that because, like, you know, like, maybe, like, that's just not, like, okay.
I feel like part of her willingness to that is just that she doesn't really understand the full context of, because she doesn't get on these flashbacks, right? Like, she wasn't there with Yuki when he asked Akito, like, oh, like, you know, am I gross? And he's like, yeah, totally, you suck. Like, never have friends and don't get married and stay sad with me forever. So I feel like part of her willingness to say all that stuff is she hasn't gotten the full picture of a better possibility that she could actually help with. And I feel like that would honestly probably change her mind a lot. Because at the end, she does ask, she could be like, okay, this is a curse is a thing. Seems not good. It's something I want to help with. And he says, like, I don't think it's time for you to learn about that. Just be yourself. And she's like,
that's the other thing, too, is that, like, she should really press on the subject. Because if she's willing to help, that's great. Like, I love that. But, like, if it's a situation that they want to get out of, they have to be willing to open up with her about it, too. Yeah. Like, you can't expect someone to help you if you don't tell them you need help.
Right. I mean, I will say the moment that she asks about the curse is right after she sees Akito.
Yeah.
And they see in it's interesting. In the manga, their eyes meet in a different context. She's literally walking back home from the estate, and she sees him like laying there on a windowsill, like looking at her. And Whereas in this, it's just by, like, a moving car, which is a little bit... So, but she kind of, like, literally, her face just drops when she sees him. So clearly, like, he's scary, and she's aware of that. She's aware that there's something scary about him, something menacing. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. We have to wrap up, but before we do... What do you think of where we are, of Kana's new situation? She's getting married.
Oh my god!
I'm so happy for her.
Can we just say she's gonna get married to someone, and she's still talking about the huge crush she has on Hattori? Like, I feel like my dream man. Yeah, I'm getting married to somebody else, but I still like him.
I feel like that's more like, you know, like remember, Hattori said, like, she looks like she did when she was with him. Like, she's got that joy in her face again. So it's more, I feel like it's more like she sees him kind of like a celebrity crush type of figure. Where it's
I think you're right, yeah.
You know, when people say, like, oh,
he's in the inner circle, like, who wouldn't?
Exactly. It's like, she's like, look, he's so gorgeous. Like, he is my ideal type. But also, like, she's happy with his, and she even says, like, where they're like, wow, are you going to cheat on your husband before even getting married to him? And it's like, I would never, no. So it's like, it's a clear end, but I'm happy that she's happy. And we get that beautiful shot of Hattori smiling. So he's happy that she's happy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's like what could have been, but also, like, I like how it's not like, oh, we're two people that are destined to be for each other. It's like, no, like, we had a really good thing, but then life happened, and we can move on and still be happy for each other.
Curses happen.
Life didn't happen. Akito just happened.
I know. It's not life. Sorry, I misspoke. Akito happened, and they were still able to find joy. Well, she was still able to find joy, and I like that moment when he asked Toru, and she goes, spring comes. That solidifies my theory that all the Somas are going to fall in love with Toru.
In some way or another. I mean, I do think it is honestly sad to me that Hattori thinks, like, you know, I think he's like a good enough person that, you know, he does want the best for Kana, and he does, like, he seems like a not religious person, but, like, in the snow after he wipes her memory, after she asks him, basically, because she's like, I wish we'd never met, which is like, damn, that's a knife to the heart. He, like, basically is, like, asking the heavens, like, please let her find someone. Like, I don't care if I need to freeze my heart away or whatever dramatic thing he says. He's like, I don't care. Just, like, she deserves somebody that can make her happy. And that's great, but that also means he doesn't think he deserves to be that happy, really.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the whole, like, part of him must honestly, like, maybe the part that doesn't blame Akito and blames himself instead, believes that he's not able to ever have that happiness because of the hashtag curse, the seahorse curse, whatever the curse actually is.
Curse.
Hashtag curse.
A part of him genuinely believes he doesn't deserve to be that happy. And I feel like that's the thing that kind of connects all the Zodiac members. Like, I think that's the biggest struggle.
Yeah. Well, and then even, like, the one member who I guess is trying to make the best of a terrible situation, which is, I'm going to forget her name again. She's the boar.
I know.
Kagura?
I
think.
Yeah. But she's, like, the one Zodiac member who's trying to make the best of, like, a terrible situation, and everyone thinks she's crazy. Yeah. And I feel bad for her, because she's literally, like, this is the situation that I've been presented with, and so why, like, if this is all that I have to love, why not love someone that I can, like, be with, like, physically and all the time, and it's not questioned, so...
See, but then that's
a really good point.
That's the thing, though. Like, how would it work with Kagura and Kyo? Because, like, remember, he's an outsider. What's to say, like, had they, like, grown up and, like, decided to get married, that Akito would have been like, no, you can't marry him because he's the cat.
Oh my god, Akito totally would do that.
He would totally do that. He'd be like, he's the outsider. He's not welcome, even though he's still a Soma.
But that's because... But again, that's because Akito has to, like, have his grasp on this situation, especially because they're both Zodiac members. So, like, I can very much easily see him saying no, but at least she's trying to find happiness, whereas everyone else just seems so, like, content within, like, their unhappiness almost. Like, maybe not content, but, like, they're, like, almost comfortable, if that makes sense.
They've normalized it. It feels like the normal life and the best they can get kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah. We're gonna leave it there. There was another thing, but I don't think we're gonna have time for it, so it's okay. It wasn't a big. We'll talk about it next episode. Because it's gonna probably be there. So yeah. You can find out all the info on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can join us on Discord to text chat about animation at overlyanimated.com/Discord. You can support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Sam, aka Yosemite Sam. And thanks, as always, to our Patreon executive producers, Ryan, Steve, Alex, Beatrice, Hugh, and Michael. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.